This is the Tabernacle Podcast with Adam Ray, your host for the day, me, Martin Rizzi, and our new friend, LeRoy Miller. LeRoy, good to meet you, man.
Nice meeting you, Martin.
Hey, this is cool. We get the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better live on the podcast. And for me, this is exciting because I always love to just kind of hear people's stories and see where they come from. But before we jump into all that, I'm very curious just how we ended up in this. So you and I met at the Sportsman Banquet kind of this last week. But how did we get there, first and foremost?
Gotcha. So I have some relatives here in town. That's why we're actually in town. We're missionaries up in Alaska. So we came down to caretake my wife's mother.
Okay.
And as we were traveling, she passed away. So we found ourselves homeless. So we're like, well, you know what? I guess God wants us to visit some churches and family and take a break from mission work up in Alaska. And so we've been just kind of hanging out and doing that. And it's been a wonderful time of building our family back up. And as I say, building our family back up, we have 6 kids. 4 of them are out of the house now. So it's just the 2 boys. So it's time for us to connect with the 2 boys. Our 12-year-old boy, who's our youngest, we haven't really gotten a chance of really raising him properly. And so this has been great to relax, sit back, and then finding the tabernacle from my wife's brother inviting us here. And it's been a blessing to sit in a church and really receive God's word. So we've been loving it.
Awesome.
Banquet comes up, and I'm like, hey, my boy was up in Alaska. I'm like, let's fly him back so we can go to the banquet together. And it was a blessing that he got to come and actually win some stuff. So that was really smooth.
Yeah, I don't know what happened that night, but their little table section, I think there was like 3 or 4 guns, one in that little corner.
Yeah,
they were killing
5
it.
guns.
5 guns?
5 guns were in our corner.
Yeah, nice.
And how many of them ended up are going to go home with you guys?
2 of them.
2 guns.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I remember you telling me that night that you had just mailed all your guns home or like sent them back.
My wife just took them home.
Okay.
Up to Alaska. She went up there to see our daughter, hopefully to see a grandbaby born. And so she brought our guns home because we brought them to go hunting and stuff like that. And so she flew them back. It's a pain to take them across the border driving. So we decided to fly them back, and then we win 2 more.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You know, I won't lie to you. When you told me that, I had a real hard time, like feeling really bad for you. But that was a pretty exciting night. So you had 2 sons there then?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
and
the 2
did
boys
they both won?
They both won. Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like that's what those things are all about. You know, there's a bunch of old guys in the room, and myself included, sitting around like hoping we win something. Yeah. But then we're looking around hoping every one of these kids walks out with something and it starts something cool with them.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm excited about. My youngest boy, like I said, we're trying to make the connection with him. The work has been very up in Alaska. We never have any breaks.
Right.
So having a 12-year-old boy that you feel like, where did life go with him? I haven't been there for him, and so this is a new stage in life for us.
Yeah, it's awesome.
The ministry that we were part of for 8 years, we stepped down. They changed in directions, and so we knew that God was not for us, not in that new direction. So we're like, okay, we'll step down, and so yeah, this is a good chapter for us.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys found us. Now, you said your wife's brother. Who is this person that I need to thank publicly?
His name is Ben Jones.
Ben Jones.
Yeah, Ben and Tasha Jones, and their daughter Lily.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at like how many people, you know, the Tabernacle is not a marketing firm by any stretch. I think we do some good stuff out there, but really it just comes down to people talking about what they've experienced here. And I'm always really excited to see kind of the lines in which people get invited and we get to know folks. But before we jump into all that, because we can jump right to the end of the story, all the stuff that's going on today. But just let's take a little bit of time to get to know you. I want to give you a chance to kind of tell your story, give us a little bit of the background. And as you do, I mean, you can start kind of way back or where you feel is appropriate, but we know we'll never get enough time to be able to get the real story. But give us kind of, you know, where God has moved you, where it started, and kind of tell us a little bit about you and your family.
All right. Yeah, so I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan area, and my wife grew up here in Thompsonville area. And so growing up there, I knew God had a calling in my life. I guess when I was a kid, I don't know, I don't remember it, but people at the church that I grew up in, which was Sheridan Road Baptist Church and Calvary Baptist. At the churches, they said that when a missionary came through, I said, I'm going to be like that guy when I grow up. And I remember I don't know I told anybody that. It was when I was younger. And so when I finished high school, I decided to go on to, at the time, Grand Rapids Baptist College to get an education and learn more and try to get into mission work. And as I was going through that, I was like, man, this is not, to me, what mission training should be about. And I didn't know, but I just kept going and paying my own way, working full time. And as all that's happening, I'm at Maranatha Bible Missionary Conference in Norton Shores, Michigan, and on staff there, maintenance, and also helping out in the kitchen. And then one summer comes out, and this young lady, and I mean young, I'm in my mid-20s, and she's 18, and she shows up on staff. And we make a connection, but both kind of shy at this. I never had a relationship in my life. And as it progressed, we're like, this is it. I asked her to marry me when I did. I asked her before that, what do you think about mission work? Because I want to know if this gal who I want to marry, if she's not for missions, then this ain't the gal for me, because missions is what I want to do. And she said, at that time we talked about what mission looked like and what it was about. And she was like, yeah, I could do missionary work.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So one, that's a level of commitment. It's like, hey, all right, she's beautiful. I love her. Like, I want to marry her, but she's got to check one box, the missions box. Is this something that just came all the way from when you were a kid? I mean, you don't even know who told you that you said that, but you know it was true, and that's just been in your veins, and you've stumbled through it all the way till this point.
Yes. Yeah, that was part of my life, and I don't know why God placed it there. I never remember studying missionaries. I never went on a mission trip. My senior year of high school, as soon as I graduated, I was like, all right, I'm going to do something for missions. And I joined an organization called, I can't remember the name of the organization, but they did sports outreach in Ukraine is where I went to. And I played volleyball over there, and I just had a blast. But the thing is that talking with the people and giving them the gospel message and watching somebody who was in a Chernobyl accident and was in the hospital, and I'm going through the pamphlet, the Ukrainian side and the U.S. side, and the person's reading through as I'm fingering it through, and they get done reading and look at me and they shake their head. And I looked at him, I shook my head like, no. And I pointed, and the spot I pointed to was what Jesus Christ did for you. And they reread that, and tears started coming down their eyes. And doing something like that and seeing God work, I was like, yeah, this is life right here. This is life. That's since that point on is when God just kept us going strong, or kept me going strong until when we met my wife, then it was us going strong. And as we were together, shortly married, kids started coming right away. We have 6 kids total. I think I mentioned that. First 4 were girls. I told my wife, says, I'm done. Let's go ahead and adopt some boys. And then God says, you're not done. He gave us a boy 3 years later after our 4th daughter. And then after that, 5 years later, another son came along, which was a surprise because I'm older in age. I didn't want another child. I don't want to be in my 60s when my child's finally ready to leave the house. But.
Yeah, tell me about it, brother.
Are you sitting in that boat yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, our little guy. I'll be 61 when he graduates from high school. So
okay. Yeah, but he's going to keep you young, though.
Yeah, that's what they say. Right now, all that's happening is he's keeping me tired. So
yes.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, you guys are heroes. Because I couldn't do it. I don't know how in that stage of life you can go with that little sleep. That makes me wonder. And you got a puppy on top of it.
Oh yeah. Which, add fuel to the fire, man.
So your wife's 18 years old. You're mid-20s, so you're robbing the cradle a little bit, right?
A little bit.
All right, well done. I mean, it's well played. And then on top of this, you're filling the house. But mathematically, I'm no good with math. How old are you guys when you have your last son?
Oh boy, he was born 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
So I'm 54. So
42.
42.
Yeah.
So you were my age. I admire you that much more, sir.
Okay.
Because there is no way I could pull that off right now.
Yeah.
I think I would just cry. Lord. please. You don't have to prove this.
Yes, exactly.
So there was a word you said in there I want to catch because I think there's a connection here. At least I've only heard the word Maranatha one other time, and it's from you. So is the same Maranatha? Is there
No, different Maranatha. I pastored at Maranatha Baptist Church in Lansing for years.
Okay.
And grew up in that church as well. My dad's the pastor, lead pastor there still. But yeah, there's Maranatha Baptist Bible College in Watertown, Wisconsin. And then there's Maranatha Bible Camp over, if I remember correctly, kind of south of Muskegon
Yes.
in that area.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of them are affiliated. Maranatha means the Lord is coming.
I was just going to ask, is this a place or is this a term? Okay,
Yes.
so my ignorance helps us understand things sometimes.
Yeah,
It's my
good.
job.
It's one of those terms that we often discussed whether we should rename it, just because Maranatha is not necessarily like an in vogue term that people use all the time. But
Neither is tabernacle.
Yeah.
And we're pulling it off. So.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. I did have a gentleman ask me Sunday the history of the name tabernacle.
Really?
I was like, well, in the Old Testament. And he's like, no, the tabernacle here. So it was fun to.
It's like, let me get you a pamphlet. I'm learning a lot about that right now, but that's for a different podcast. Well, awesome. So now, I guess we'll get to I know there is a connection. You guys were the ones that kind of started this conversation, but I don't want to jump ahead too much. So you've got 6 kids.
Yes.
Missions is clearly the call on your life, and your wife is bought in wholly, hook, line, and sinker. You guys are doing this. So keep going. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So hook, line, and sinker. And as we are having our first child, I'll back up a bit.
Okay.
We decided to step into mission training. We were given a pamphlet just before we were married from a local pastor here in Mesick area. And that pamphlet gave us a place of a facility to train missions, New Tribes Bible Facility. And I read through the pamphlet, I'm like, this is what you need to study missions. And I was so excited. We signed up for it, and newly married, sign up for it. We fly to Alaska for our honeymoon. I actually go off to work. Now, you guys are going to like me for this. I don't think anybody's going to like me from this. I flew off, leaving my bride there in Alaska at a friend's house that I knew 2 years before when I went up to Alaska to work the canneries. My wife could not go to the canneries because she just got pregnant. And they didn't want what if she's got problems? And so she had to stay back. We discussed it. We prayed about it. Should we go? We know we need the money for college. Yes, I would. I went away for a month and a half, 2 months. I don't remember how long it was. It was pretty much the summer. And she stayed behind at somebody's house that she just met. And I went off to work, so we make some money for our first year of college.
So here's the thing. He's got to break down the canneries. I've had my first experience. I got to tour one in Larson Bay off of Kodiak. But tell us what life in the cannery is all about.
Life in the cannery is 16-hour shifts, 7 days a week, all 7 days. You get 8 hours off, and you're supposed to mandatory sleep during that 8 hours, national law, rules, or something.
Right.
But at the cannery, you're meeting people from all over the world working there, all of the United States. I like the best because as soon as I show up to the cannery, I had worked there 2 other times before this, I'd seek out Mexicans, and I would play dominoes with them. Because I grew up with my grandpa's last name is Gonzalez. Gotcha. Mexican, and I grew up with him playing dominoes, and so I'd seek them out, play dominoes with them. But at the canneries, I'd also talk about Christ. You're standing next to somebody in line as you're working on fish, and I just start talking to them about Christ. I think probably at that time when I was at the cannery the one time, these people were playing this game called the Kevin Bacon game. You guys ever heard of that game?
No.
Any movie star you mention, you could trace that movie star back to somebody starring with Kevin Bacon. You could do it with any
like
any
the 7
person.
steps away. Or,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so I'm like, I don't watch movies enough, and if I did, I'm not going to memorize who's what. So I can't play the game, but I do know something I have memorized and talked about. That's how I talked about Christ all the time. They go back to the game all the time, but I would ask things about the Bible, things they knew and heard about.
That's awesome.
I always enjoyed it there.
So give us the easy version of what a cannery does. What's the actual process?
First, what kind of fish are you working with?
Salmon.
Salmon, okay.
Yeah. So we're working king salmon and red salmon, silver salmon is the last salmon coming through the season. Salmon come off the barge on the water. They ice them down, bring them in, then they dump them into a hopper. You got a person open up the hopper. The fish come through the hopper. The next person on line chops their head off with the machine. They're wearing gloves plus a wristband that the hands can't go far enough to get chopped off themselves.
Okay.
After they get chopped off, they feed it through the machine, which cuts open the belly and cleans out the inside, but not cleans out all the way through. It just takes the guts off and the eggs off, because those are very important. The eggs run for very expensive finances in Japan. And so they come through, someone separates those, drops off the conveyor belt, people start cleaning them out, rinse them out, get the bloodline out of them. As they're doing it, they need to be safe, because if they rip it open too much as they're cleaning, they can expose some bones, which then degrades the fish. You want fish that's going to sell for the market, for high market, which would be at restaurants. The next one is for sale whole fish. The next one that pretty much is dog food. So as it goes through the thing, the last person grades them. They get flash frozen, come out of the flash freezer for another crew. This crew is called the first crew is processing crew, second crew is glazing crew. Glazing crew then takes these fish, they smash them down so they pop off the pan so they can dump them into a sugar solution. They coat it in sugar, and then they put it into plastic sleeves and weighed and then put into boxes. And that crew is a little bit smaller crew, but very, very effective, because they got to keep up with the bigger crew. So I got to work both crews one time when I did a straight 40 hours of work with no sleep. And I worked my crew, and then I went over them and said, hey, do you guys have any opens I can help out? I said, yeah. So they stuck me in the spot where you get splashed on like crazy, because when they dump it in there, the fish hit the water, splash on you, you got to pull all the fish out and send them to the people for packing them. I loved it.
Wild.
I loved it.
And you're familiar with this.
Yep.
This whole process.
So there's the interesting part with the canneries is it's all based on the harvest and the timing of the harvest, which is all led by the spawning of these salmon.
Right.
And they're moving up into the bays and then the rivers. So if you've ever watched the commercial fishermen, the way that they net these fish, it's an insane process. But they're coming in, literally, they load the boat, which is like a small ship,
Right.
and that goes into these big giant hoppers in the bottom of the boat, and they get iced, and they come straight to the cannery. So it's like fresh. So that's why the 16-hour days, no breaks for a certain period of time till the end of that salmon run, and then the season's done.
Time's over. So I'm sitting here completely unfamiliar with any of this, just thinking to myself, you're telling me that missions work, like leading up to missions work, is really glamorous work. You're just getting fish juice sprayed at you, 16-hour work shifts. Like, you put in some sacrifice to get here, but nothing compared to your wife. So I don't blame you at all. You're like, hey, you guys aren't going to like me for this. No, man, I fully understand. You got to do what you got to do to feed the family. I mean, most of my college was working through Burger King. I still wonder why my wife thought that I was going to be a useful human. No offense to those of you working Burger King out there, but you do what you got to do.
Yep.
I am, however, all that much more impressed with Sarah. Like, she's a hero. She meets somebody for, I mean, how long had she known them before you take off to the cannery?
We knew each other for a year,
Okay.
and then we're married for a week.
And then how long did she know that person? Like,
That person, they met that Sunday.
that Sunday, and you left that week?
Yeah, that week. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's a pretty special individual.
Yeah.
Who's willing to play along with all this. But
Yeah.
you guys got to figure out how to make ends meet. You got to survive.
Yeah.
You're about to make a very large family, so you got to get on the horse, and get it done.
We knew the mission training there at New Tribes Mission in Jackson, Michigan. We knew that that's where God was calling us. And after we finished that training, we also knew that we were ready for a second child. And so we thought, they told us that mission training is really difficult, so we decided to step out for a few years to raise our children. And so we were living in Muskegon area during that time. And so we finally stepped back into training. And as we're ready to get back in training, we had at that time 3 children. And as we were doing training, we realized that 3 children, 4 and under, is very difficult for being in the study and learning and sleeping. And so we were actually asked by them to step down for a period of time so the children get older. And so we did. We stepped down for a period of time, and we went to California. I had to work at cell towers. I got to climb towers, but that wasn't the main reason I was at cell towers. They brought me in as a as an apprentice electrician.
Okay.
And so they trained me what to do, and I did all the sites for them. I had electrician and mainly bidding on the jobs. So we finished training, though, finally, 10 years to finish our 4-year program.
Sounds like my college career.
Sounds like your college career. I didn't work Burger King, though.
So after, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead here, but when you think of all of the experiences that you had during the time of that 10 years, how have you seen God utilize the electrical skills, the understanding of the canneries, even just the salmon runs, as God called you to Alaska? Like, a lot of those processes probably have played into being able to effectively minister in the places that you are now.
Yeah. It's neat how God trains you in ideas you're being trained in. So with the fish themselves, work with natives in Alaska, I understand what it means for them to have fish. Because if they don't have fish, they don't have a life supply. And so I understand what it means when we're catching fish offshore and we got record-breaking years, what it means to them inland. And then so I have a more of a heart to them for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then for just climbing towers, we set up a tower in Hooper Bay, Alaska for the radio ministry there. 60-foot tower, 20-foot sections, or 80-foot tower, 20-foot sections. We had 4 sections. And so to be able to climb that tower and hook off and just hang there as you're doing what you need to do on the tower to put it in place. That was pretty ingenious. The guy who did it, he climbs towers all over the world. And so he made a jib pole out of a 3-inch galvanized pipe. Weld them together. Jib pole is you put it alongside another pole, straps onto it, so you can use that pole to pull up the next pole. So jib pole, pulleys, and a 4-wheeler to pull up 100-pound plus sections.
It's awesome.
As we hooked them in.
Yeah, and as you're working on this, are you processing backwards, going, okay, God, I see why school took me 10 years. You needed me in this place at this time to know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I processed before we did the tower climbing that they're like, LeRoy, can you come to the tower with us? Oh yeah, I could do that. God, I've done this. I was in a place where God put us, and we were there for years, and we didn't know why. Why can't we get back in the training? We're ready for this. And they told us as the 1 year we tried to get back in, we're full. Like, that's fine. Next year we're ready to get in. This is the last year we're going to do training like this. They're changing the training. We recommend you wait a year for it. Okay. So yeah, God
building the timeline all on his own.
Yep, building all his own. Neat thing about us is as we're growing up and as we're working as a family, we realize we don't ever have money. Never any money. But God takes care of us through that time. And that really worked out once we got to Alaska, because we could see God's hand in everything as He trained us, brought us into a place that we're serving Him and serving Him in the same financial as most people would say poverty. But to us, it was riches. And we've enjoyed that. So, yeah.
It makes me even happier to know that you won 2 guns.
Thank you on that one, yes. That's cool.
It's so cool, though. Like, as I'm listening to your story, even to this point, there's that clear thread. And it's not just that God laid it on your heart. It's that you're a missionary wherever you're at. You know, canneries, and God's using, and He's actually developing and building all these pieces. The hard part about that is you never get to see that along the way. It always takes a looking back, right?
Yeah.
To see where He's building these things. And I'm sure at times, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, it was probably frustrating when you're told, hey, we're out, or did you guys always just have a positive attitude toward it? It's like, all right, Paul said he was content in all circumstances, so that's the gig, let's do this. Or was it frustrating? I'm sure it was challenging along the way.
Yeah, so the neat thing is having a spouse, it's almost like if their parents didn't train them to understand God's provision, now as a spouse, I get to help train them to understand what God's provision means. And because I was just willing to flow. Like, oh yeah, God's got us taken care of. And my wife, she had difficulties with that, but she would see the positiveness and the understanding that I knew that God has her back. And so she then realized that, hey, I'm going with the flow the same way. And it became part of a lifestyle for us. And it wasn't difficult, but she would come up with questions every once in a while and say, this is what's happening. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. And we'd pray about it, and it helped grow us in faith.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I do know, though, that it wasn't always glamorous. And it wasn't because of finances. It was because of the difficulties of us alone. That's a cool thing about you guys' church. Multiple pastors, helping one another, studying together, learning, so that you can guide your guys' church. We work in a position where it was just us, and not having any outside influence, helping us see things, helping us through. And so we had a difficulty in marriage, which I didn't even know was going on. I'm thinking everything's great, but it wasn't. But I don't know if we're there yet in this story.
We're wherever you want to be, but that's a depth of a personal section of this. But if you want to walk us through that a little bit, I can't imagine what it is like. I mean, I'm not going to say that from the story you just told me that I can't guess that maybe there are going to be some challenges along the way. Young family, we just took all the risks in the world. Are you guys similar personalities? Because it may be personality-wise really easy for you to go with the flow, but it sounds like she had to learn that along the way.
Yeah, she did. She did have you learn that. Sarah's a wonderful person and brilliant person. She was homeschooled. I went through public school. I learned nothing in school. I found out later that whole thing that you read and can't understand type deal, that's what I had. Okay. But it wasn't terminalized when I was in school at that time. And so when we went to college, New Tribes Mission College, I'm in mission training out in Oregon. And when we're there, we're going through their books. Here's your assignment. Read this book. You got 3 days. Sign it off that you read it on the thing. Here's your papers. Here's this. Here's your kids you're taking care of. So everything's coming upon us. And I'm checking the box. Didn't read my schoolwork. I come in and have a meeting with my teacher, who's my mentor person at that school. And he goes, LeRoy, we have a little bit of a problem here. You need to start reading your books, or you're going to flunk. I've been reading them, but I can't check that I read the whole book because I don't read the whole book. I can't read that fast. Well, actually, teacher, I can read that fast, but do you want me to comprehend? Because if I read that fast, I don't understand anything I read, but I can check the box for you. I'm reading to comprehend it, so I can't finish it in time. There's not enough time for me to finish that book and what I've got allotted to me. He looks at me, you check the box. Thank you.
Yeah,
so I started checking the box, and I did the same thing. I read as much as I could to comprehend as much as I could until they gave us a new book. I just can't do it. The only book I can read to comprehend the best is the Bible. All of their books I'll be reading, I'm like, I just reading that paragraph. Actually, what did I just read in this whole chapter? I have to go back and start reading again.
Yep.
But the Bible's not the same. Yeah.
I don't know if you've gotten the opportunity to meet Pastor Tim, but he will love that section of it because that's very much how he learns as well. A voracious reader, loves to be, but had to learn that he didn't learn the typical way, and he didn't have teachers along the way that always did that. And I think he'd be fine with me saying it. That was really challenging for him, and even to this day, it's when we do things a certain way, he's like, no, that's not how I learn. But he has figured it out, and now he's able to overcome it, and that sounds like very similar.
Yeah. Most of my learning comes hands-on.
Yeah.
So when I got up to Alaska, doing electrical work, at the facility me and my wife met at New Tribes, not training, Maranatha Bible Missionary Conference, I was maintenance. I learned everything. So LeRoy, we need you to get underneath the oh my goodness, the thing was old, like. If you lit a match, it's going to go up in a second.
Right.
Can you get underneath there and weld this copper line for us? Okay, how do I do that? So they showed me how to do it. I climbed underneath and do it, solder it together. And with the torch underneath this building, which is like no crawling space at all, leaves all over the place.
Right.
And down there with a squirt bottle. And I took care of the job for him. So that's what was me. I could understand that. I could learn that way. And that's what brought us, when we were doing mission work, when we first got up there, our finances were meek, as I said. So I was working full time, building houses. And as I'm building houses, then I'm going off to Bush, Alaska. I tell my boss, hey, I'm taking a week and a half off in 3 weeks. He goes, okay. And he knew I was doing mission work. And that's why he said, okay, easily. And he knew I was coming back and was going to work hard for him. And so that was life for us, was working hard, doing missions. And that, after 3 years of being in Alaska, that really showed itself when we then were asked by an organization, can you come on full-time for us? We need a maintenance person. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what God's been preparing us for. We prayed about it. And God said, yeah, this is what I want you. We went there. We gave them a 3-year commitment, thinking, okay, God is going to open the doors for us and show us the next step so we can continue to get into Bush, Alaska, and plant a church there. Well, 3 years comes, that director says, I'm leaving. Is anyone staying? The other 2 people there on staff, they're like, no, we're going to leave too. Me and my wife we can't let this place go down. There's so many kids that come through this camp. So we said, we'll stay on. We'll stay on until they get a new director and then see what God's got for us at that point. 8 years later is when they got that new director.
Wow.
So we ran the camp, me and my wife, and whatever kids are at home at that time, ran the camp ourselves. No other staff. I got to learn in our first retreat that came and went, oh, I got to make a receipt for you? Yeah, it was difficult because we had to go through the computer, which we'd never been into computers, to learn everything. And then, of course, when taxes came, that was a whole new ball game.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
So tell us a little bit more about the camp. What does it look like? I'm thinking of youth camp down here, this area, and I have a sneaking suspicion it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it was a beautiful lodge, beautiful place. The people who built it with the snow load of when they found out Willow, Alaska, Hatcher Pass, how much snow do you get a year? Oh, 150 to 180 inches. Okay, we're going to build this twice the snow load. So you never have to worry about shoveling that lodge building off. And they did a wonderful job. So our camp hosts 100 people, the camp that we were at, not our camp. They host 100 people can come through. And then, of course, a guest speaker cabin and all that jazz like that. Hopefully your cabin's nice when you get to be a guest speaker. Yeah. So we took care of the camp. They had waterfront, boats, canoes, kayaks. We even brought in some new stuff that we were the first in Alaska to get it because we had someone expedite it from down here in the lower 48 and drive it up for us because they weren't shipping to Alaska. So the first camp to ever have one of those up there, and I don't think any other camps still got one of those devices up there. One's called a wigwam and one's called a corkle. The one you stand up on and you step your feet and the thing propels through the water, and the other one's a circle device. You can use it like a kayak, you can tug of war, you can do little donuts, quick donuts in it. The kids enjoyed them. So
that's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So
what waterway were you on? Were you on something?
A private lake.
Private lake. Cool.
Yeah. The only there's 2 other people that own property on it to 2 neighbors. One of them, there's 2 houses now. The one was there for forever, and then the other one just built a house there.
Got it.
Yeah.
So how many? It's just you and your family running this thing.
Yeah.
And you got the kids coming through. I don't understand. Like, what's the area like? Is there? And do you guys have any people around you? Do you have any sense of community at this point?
That's where it broke down.
Gotcha.
Working in camp, weekend retreats in the winter, summer, 7 days a week. You've got week-long retreats and then weekend retreats. So you have the turnover of bedding and everything and cleaning and everything between the groups coming and going. And so Sundays coming and going and our lives at camp. We're not getting to hit the church scene anymore. The days off we do go to church. And we go to churches who not only a church that helped us move up to Alaska, we would go to that church, but then also we go to other churches who are now part of the camp that we see, hey, this is our other extended church family. We're helping this high school group get to know who God is. So to us, we're part of that church. So we go visit these churches. And for the majority of part, they understood who we were and they accepted us. So we'd come in as visitors, but we weren't really visitors. But our church life was only 1/4 of the year going to a Sunday church service.
Wow.
And it made it difficult.
Yeah.
Really difficult.
Now, most of these churches that you're ministering to are village churches, or are they?
These churches are just regular town villages.
Got it.
Yeah. We, being in Willow, Alaska, we're not in Bush, Alaska, so we're
Yep.
not in the villages. I'm still going to villages and doing ministries out of Bethel, Alaska. In Bethel, Alaska, I do radio there and help out the radio ministry. But then we travel in. I travel in with my partner, Jesse, and we go in by snow machine in the wintertime and by boat in the summertime. And we have a radio that you can plug in, charge up the battery, or solar powered, so it's getting juice that way. And we're giving it to the people. They told us, you need to get some money for them so they have some, oh, well, this is mine. That didn't work. They never have money.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, we're giving these things away. And so, yeah, so that was a wonderful ministry doing that.
So this is kind of where I found some parallels with LeRoy just in talking after one of the services. He's like, yeah, I'm missionary in Alaska. Oh, fantastic. I had just gotten back from going up with Josh and Sylvia Roach in Palmer, Alaska, and they run a ministry that we support with Yukon River Knives. It's not a plug, shamelessly at all.
It's a little bit of a plug. But
I mean, it might be a little.
I mean,
anyway,
it literally supports Alaskan missionaries. I think this might be the right podcast.
Yeah,
to plug
I felt
that.
like it was.
It seems right.
So I had just gone up there with them, got to see the ministry that they're running, and they do the same thing. So they're ministering to the villages by boat when the water is fluid.
Yes.
And when it is not, they're on snow machines.
Yeah.
And just being able to be a part of some of the support for them is super encouraging. It's wild though, like better than either of us know, but snow machines cost a fortune. One small little mechanical issue with a snow machine in Alaska, it's like, well, I need this part. Well, where's that part at? Well, it's in the lower 48. Sweet, I might get that in 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the process, and then it's extra expensive to get it shipped. Boats, even worse. There's a lot of marinas and things up in Alaska, obviously, because of the so much water, but still, it's nothing is a cheap endeavor. While I was there, we just changed the oil on the lower unit of the boat motor, and when I do that down here, it costs me about $34 for everything. And it was 100 and something. I don't remember the exact price, but 100 and something up there. And I was literally looking at the guy like, this is highway robbery. But he's like, well, imagine all the shipping that little quart of oil had to go through to get to us.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure they're still making more than they probably need to. But it's an interesting component to that. So when I hear you talking about that part of your ministry, there's an extra burden there for you. In the camp ministry specifically, when a guest speaker would come up, are you hiring a guest speaker for every retreat, every week? Are these speakers coming from lower 48? Are they predominantly ministering in Alaska already? And what is how are you building this rapport with churches to have the ministry full like that for a year-round season? Because that's a lot of work.
What he's asking is, when do we get to come up and speak at this place? Because
obviously,
like
if there's a need, we're happy to do that for you. So
yes. So the camp, when we came into the camp, they were well established with local churches using it. Their guest speakers will be their guest speakers that they bring in. So our facility then is being rented out to them.
Perfect.
For the summer camp, though, it's a little bit different. We would bring in speakers, and it was difficult because when I brought a speaker in the one time for high school group, they didn't go the direction which I thought, wow, yeah, this isn't working for the kids. So then I talked to my wife, said, I love speaking, so I just do the teaching for the high school. And she goes, go for it. And so I just took over, and I spoke the next 7 years for the high school camp. We went from 20 kids, our first high school camp, to over 120 my 6 year of speaking to the kids.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that, and it was a blessing growing with them, getting to know them both. I would teach elementary, middle school, high school. High school was the one I really enjoyed, but I would teach other groups too. And you know what? When I taught them, I never dumbed down my message. Like, these kids understand. They do. They know stories.
The gospel is simple to be able to convey. You don't have to,
Yeah. And
That's cool.
so I just taught them what I was ready to teach the high schoolers, and they all understood. They all had questions. They all would, and they would it's amazing their brains.
Yeah.
They would say something to me like, I didn't even think about that. And I look into it and I get back and let them know the next meeting, say, oh yeah, I was asked this question. Thank you guys for your knowledge and thinking, and this is something that I just grew on and I want to share with you. And it's great. It's great learning from them.
That's awesome.
But yeah, for people coming in, the camps were pretty much hosted by their own facilities and whatnot.
Yeah, it's great.
But the camp is changing directions, like I said earlier, and so we stepped out because of it. It's they're no longer having the weekend retreats. They're going to be going to a college. They're going to be college now, and with a summer camp program.
Got it.
And so we're like, you know what? To us, all these local churches have just been displaced, and work and being part of these local churches' lives, where you're raising their kids and giving them an atmosphere of learning, an atmosphere of becoming a Christian. They're not going to have that. They have to try to find a new camp, which is possible. There's camps all over, but that really hit us hard.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because it sounds like you have a really high value for the local church. And there are some parachurch ministries, camps and others, that have a high value for that week in, week out relational gospel presentation that happens within a local church. And then there are others that are like, no, we know you do what you do, we do what we do. And it almost feels adversarial. And none of this kingdom work is meant to be that way.
Right.
It is meant to be collaborative. We're supposed to work together. The gift that God laid on your heart, and I love it because it's so evident, the heartbeat of missions is your world. And for whatever reason, camp ministry, because I know we have enough friends in camp ministry, it's not easy work in the lower 48. In the best of circumstances.
Yeah.
It's just grueling and, oftentimes less than glamorous. But I'm grateful for those folks because they add so much to the local church. We can't be experts of all things. Our job is really basic. We try to put the pieces together. And when we try to spread out and do all the things, we do it really poorly. So that's cool. And I'm grateful for that.
As you're sharing all of the different components that you guys are involved in, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to sit over and hear that there is an exceptional amount of pouring out with no space to refuel or fill. Yeah. And you've already alluded to the impact that had on your family. Go as in depth as you want to into that conversation, but how long did it take in ministry? Because I think this is a really interesting component for even our staff, for other staff, for anybody in ministry that might be listening. After a little bit of a while, you're serving out of an empty tank. And so then it just becomes rote. It's dutiful and not something that you can be passionate about. There's no feeding happening. There's no freshness because what you're giving them is what you've already known, because there's no time to learn new things. And like you said, you dig to answer a question, but as far as just being fed and being able to fellowship with your family in church and have someone else take those responsibilities, it's not there. And so how long did it take before you started seeing that it was having a negative impact on your family? And then what has God done to rejuvenate those relationships, and how is he repairing those, and how is he ministering to your heart even now? I know that's like 5 questions in a row, but it kind of all ties together. Okay. So
yeah. So first, Martin, thank you for pointing out that camp ministry is part of church ministry. It's one of the fingers that's part of that hand and serving. And you had mentioned something there that what you guys do sometimes is one thing, and camp people probably more things, so they look more glorious than not. But when you go somewhere and you mention, oh yeah, I'm with this camp, and you say the name of the camp, you'll have everybody like, as you're walking through, the kids like, hey, that's the cook. Mm-hmm. There's my wife. Hey, that's the cook. She's the hero of the camp. When we go places, everybody knows the chef because everybody knows how well the food was at our camp. It was famed as the best camp food in the state.
Yeah.
And my wife, in my opinion, She is the best cook in the state. Best to cook anywhere we go.
Tell you what, camp food is not always known for how good it is, so that says a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing. So getting to you, Adam. Yes, working through camp ministry, I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe this is what God wants. I'll take the director position. I can then find some people to do the maintenance. I don't have to do all the maintenance work. I can just oversee it, help them out. Vision, I had vision of what the camp could do for growth, but that's what the director was supposed to do. So I'm like, I'm not going to pursue that. So we're just putting money in the bank, money in the bank, because I'm not expanding anything because I'm not the director. The board is overseeing us, watching what we're doing and approving everything that we say we need this, we need that, because those are necessities. And so we're living this life and going through, and I'm like, maybe this is what God wants. The whole time oblivious that my wife has been suffering. Suffering because, and communication-wise, I wasn't communicating with her in the way she wanted me to communicate with her. I thought everything's going well. And it wasn't until I find out as we're going through, when we're talking about taking a director position, I realize as I'm sitting in a meeting with the other board members, my wife's there, and she interjects about not really wanting the position. I realize, oh, okay, I guess I really didn't go into our household and figure this out together. And so I stepped back and says, you know what, I don't think I want this position, because obviously my wife doesn't want it. And I don't know why, but I can't take it then. And so I told him, you have to look for a different director. And so we left at that. And then I asked my wife about it, but I wasn't getting answers. And it wasn't until almost a whole year went by, as we're not communicating properly, but still living a life and serving, that I realized as it came to a head, you know what? Let's step down, or let's get help. And we actually found some help. My wife had asked a couple pastors that we knew, and they said, oh yeah, you need help right away, but they weren't willing to step in and be that help right away, which was really devastating to us. And then we found this one church that we've adored coming up to camp, and we went into there, and the pastor, as we were leaving, was greeting us and saying, hey, thanks, and talking to us. And he looked at my wife, says, how you doing? And she just shook her head to him, says, come tomorrow, we'll sit down with you. And so we did. And when we sat down, he's like, okay, you guys are doing counseling. And so he hooked up us with one of their counselors in their church. And that was life-changing. 6 months later, God made us fresh again. And
Lord.
And it wasn't anything that we did, anything that I could have done, because I didn't know anything was wrong.
We're oblivious that way sometimes.
Oh yeah. But when you see your wife's emotion going, you know something's wrong. But when she can't communicate it to you, and it has to go through a counselor, then it has to go through a counselor. And that's the way. Yeah.
I've seen that story play out a lot of different ways. And, there can be a lot of resentment at the table of, why didn't you tell me this sooner? I'm about to take this, and I think that we forget that our job as husbands is to hear and learn our wives, right? That's what I'm learning.
That's right.
And it's not easy. I don't often do it well. But when we do, it's our job to step back and go, okay, how do we help this? And just to hear you say, I'm sitting at the table, and I probably know how I would have reacted in that moment. And I'm sure that some of those same emotions come up, even in you. But to say, hey, we got to step back and figure this out before we take a step forward. I have a lot of respect for that. I think most of us as men could do real well to take a moment and pause before we take the next step or the next charge or the next, running leap most of the time.
Yeah. We have a lot of missionary friends up there in Alaska. I'm wearing a shirt from a conference we do every year that we don't put on. We get to go and attend it. An awesome ministry, Arctic Barnabas Ministries, ABM up there in Alaska, put together this retreat for all the missionaries in Alaska to come to. And it's held at Victory Bible Camp, big, huge facility, massive facility, wonderful staff. And we would go to that retreat, and we would just bask in the teaching and the music of guest speakers coming up from the Lower 48. Most recently was from out of Tennessee. A church came there 2 years in a row. They were just going to do 1 year, but then the second year, they ended up hey, can you guys come bail us out? Because the person who's going to be our guest speaker kind of overbooked himself and he's double booked. They're like, oh yeah, we can come up and do it again. And it was a blessing, just a blessing to sit in that. But in that, I had to learn these missionaries going through problems like ours. And we would share what's going on in our lives. My wife had a sickness that 3 months long it lasted. I felt like a year. She had what was called parvovirus B17. This virus is actually called slap cheek disease in kids. But if a parent or an adult gets it, it's debilitating. Yeah. I'm talking like arthritis in her hands that she can't move them. She can't do nothing. She's having hot flashes, cold flashes, just shivering. We're going to the car. It's like 60 degrees outside. She's just shivering like crazy. One of the side effects from just one thing after another. I was in the village when she gives me a phone call. Says, hey, I got this rash. Like, okay. It looks something like Jesse's rash that he just got. Like, okay, what's that mean? Because I thought this was for kids. She goes, I don't know. And then she sends me a link. And I read through the link. I'm like, do you have some of these things going on? She goes, I have a few of these things happening. I was like, what? So she starts naming some of the effects she's having. Says, okay, I'm booking a ticket tomorrow. I'm coming home. And she goes, no, you can stay there and finish. I'm like, no. Says, I'm booking a ticket. I'm coming home. And so I booked the ticket. And, you know, I was supposed to be there for another 5 days serving out there. And it's like, no, I'm going home. And yeah, it was something else. Raising your wife, helping her do everything. And we didn't know how long this was going to last.
Right.
But then we had to share this at the ministry to all the other missionaries. And as we shared it, all the time we had other people coming to us. Hey, my wife went through this. My wife went through that. And that's how we got through it. And then we get to learn from them how we can continue because she's at the tail end of it this time. We had to learn from them how we can continue. And that was just another hand up in Alaska that just helps one another out. But to say all that, some of those missionaries had problems as we had it. And I shared. And we had people coming to us, say, hey, who do you talk to? Who can we reach out to? Do you know any other ministries?
Right.
We just had a couple who just went through an organization in Grand Rapids to help them out because their marriage was failing. And after they did that, they went to the coast of North Carolina to another ministry, which gave them a place to stay so they can live out what they learned for 6 months.
Right.
And they're right now getting ready to head back up to Alaska.
Amazing. It's good.
Well, I mean, so I find this interesting. We've been in kind of a marriage series on the podcast lately. And today was like, well, we're going to depart from that. No, we really didn't. This is just marriage for missionaries, which I think is probably an amazing topic to consider. But as I hear you talking about this, it doesn't shock me. I mean, missionary work is one of the most stressful things that a human can do. And the idea of doing that as a couple, to be transient and have community being distant and all the things that you've described, I mean, there's so many challenges in this.
Yeah.
But to know that you're willing to share your story and to use that to help other people, I think is beautiful because we have listeners that have, delusions of missionary work, right? Because we all see the missionary video and we're like, hey, I want to go there and do that. And it seems like an awesome adventure, but the cost is high. The sacrifice is always high for what God calls us to, if we're willing to do that. I'm grateful for folks that do it because I know that, like my wife and I's marriage, that wouldn't be good for us. I have this desire to go and explore the entire world. I can promise you that she does not have the same desire to go and explore the entire world. She wants to see them all evangelized, and she's happy to send me when necessary. Probably not our best bet. I'm curious, though. Just first, I want to make sure, did that hit most of your 5?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was an awesome answer, so I figured.
It's great.
I'm curious, because what I don't know yet is kind of where you're at now. So the camp has changed directions, and you guys have decided. You've ended up here for a time, and I couldn't imagine how God works out all the pieces and the details to get you here and connect us. But what is God doing now in Alaska? You guys are heading back, so there must be some purpose on your heart that God is calling you to. What does that look like now and as you go forward?
Yes. So I want to interject. Adam had said something earlier. He had talked about working there in Palmer and the expense of that. As I would snow machine in and we do whatever, you go into the bush, Alaska. So Palmer, Alaska is pretty much what's called the road system.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a lot cheaper. Bush, Alaska then is everything's planed in or barged in and then planed in from that hub where barged ins do. And so you're looking at taking that $120 and you're making it 6 times more for the native community. So up in Alaska and the native community, they have what they call Walmart to go shopping at. So that's the local junkyard where all the snow machines are laid out and you just go there and you help yourself out. Find the parts you need, pull it off, and go put it on your sled. So the old people of the village, 40 plus, they're still using all their old sleds. I'm talking like the old Skidoo 500s and, just no shocks to the systems at all. And that's what they're using because they would rebuild them every year. So it's ready for the next year pretty much. The new kids are all buying these new fancy sleds and realizing, boy, the roughness that we ride out in the tundra, these sleds aren't meant for this. But the parts, there's not a boneyard yet. So it's too expensive. So they're slowly making boneyards for the newer sled systems out there. I just want to inject that.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
Out there in the bush, Alaska, it's a lot more expensive.
We've done a couple projects on Kodiak Island, and all the lumber is barged in. And so he'll hire a guy to go and shop all the components in like Oregon or somewhere.
Yeah.
And then they'll put them in a shipping container and ship it up. And so he's like, within the next 13 to 14 months, that will arrive, and then we'll call you back up to finish the project.
Yes. Yeah.
So one of the projects was building a small deck off the side of one of the lodges, and I get all done, and I'm putting the balusters according to code. So like a 4-inch ball can't fit between the balusters.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about the code. He's just like, build the balusters, build the railing in the deck. But I'm thinking I need to do this up to code if I'm going to have my name on it, and it ends up that we're 2 balusters short. And so 13 months later, the 2 balusters come in on a barge. He could finish the little piece of the handrail. From that point on, I was like, all right, I'm just going to measure out, and whatever we have available, we'll make it work. So,
do you hear this, Adam Sharp? I don't ever want to hear you complain about building your house again.
Yeah.
Just not a thing.
So I was at me and my wife went to a fishing guide service. And I was a guide the first time. We did it twice. The first time I was a guide, this was so after she was pregnant, didn't get to a cannon with me, I came back and we went to a guide place for a month and a half. So I was guiding, and it was great. The next time we went up to the guide, now we have 6 kids with us, and we're guiding for the same person. He had questions about, 6 kids, I don't know, can I really trust this family? My wife was going to be the cook. I was going to be a guide for him. And but what happened was the person in the town that we lived in Baker City was on his board. And so she knew us. So she vouched for us. So he's like, yeah, take them on. So we did. When we get there, though, he doesn't have enough customers for me to guide. So now I'm building onto the lodge. I'm building additions. I built an addition on one side, become the fishing shack area where they would have all the poles and all, so that the guides can tie all their stuff and have their own little area so they're ready to go. And so I built that area. First of all, I had to set up a lumber mill, cut all my lumber, and then tear down what was existing so I can build up. So I built that section, build my own screen door and steps and everything, and then I got to guide for a couple of weeks, and then there's no more customers. So he looks at me and goes, hey, can you build an addition on the other side? I said, sure. And he says, I just want it this size. And I looked down like, why would you do that? Why don't you just match the other side so it look more cohesive? And if you build only this side, you got 2 feet to go and you're connecting it to the front porch. I says, I'm building it the same as the other side. And the owner of the company, he looks at me and goes, fine, do it the way you want to do. It's like, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm like you, I'm putting my stamp on this. This is going to be right.
Yeah.
And so I go drop some more trees, cut some more lumber, and start building the other side. And it came out wonderful. But it's interesting building up in Alaska.
It is. When you leave, you know that it's years probably before you go back. And so for all those years, your name is thrown around like, oh yeah, that guy built that sucker. I'm like, I want at least to be mostly positive when I leave.
I'm going to go ahead and level with you. There's nobody going to throw my name around building anything up there. So
That's not yet. There's still time, Martin.
So to get with you on what's our next, what's it look like now for us? We stepped down and not knowing, said, God, we know we want to be up in Alaska. You show us where to go. You open the doors for us. And just a couple months ago, we had a phone call from a director from another camp and told my wife and said, could you come cook for us? Our cook just stepped down this coming June. And my wife looked at me and we talked about it and prayed about it and says, yeah, let's do that. We see God's hand in this, bringing us, you being so prolific in your ability to cook and to save money for a camp in that you could train that facility in a year. We don't have to be part of that camp for the next 10 years again. Actually, it was only 8, but let's do what God wants us to do, which is to help this camp out. And then that we asked him, what do you want me to do? He goes, LeRoy, you can do whatever you want. He says, if you want to help out, you can help out on building anything. If you want to take a break and go fishing, take a break and go fishing. And I'm thinking to myself, I have 2 boys. One's graduating this year and the other one's still at home that I don't really remember taking fishing. I think I'm going to take them fishing.
Yeah.
But there's also other ministries right there in the Kenai Peninsula that I've always wanted to come alongside of and help out. And I think I'm going to step in and do that too. Come alongside and help out these other organizations, ABM being one of them. Mm-hmm. They fly into villages, they do all kinds of projects. I just go and say, hey, you have something coming up, give me a buzz. I'll meet you at the airport. So
your oldest boy specifically, I'm sure would enjoy flying in with you.
Yes, so. He's gone into Bethel with me a lot. Cool. We snow machine together, went to villages. It's great bringing a youngster in like that because he makes the connections with the kids beyond the connections we can make with the kids.
Yeah.
And we 3 years later, when we go back to that village, says, Does your boy come with you?
Yeah, awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. So great. Yeah, so God is pushing us into his new ministry there. It's going to rectify itself as it's continuing on. I know I'll be going back into Bush, Alaska more. The last 3 years at camp, really busy, and especially when COVID hit, they were shut down the villages.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We did go in during the one time, built the cell tower, built the radio tower, had to have them swab me, brought tears in my eyes, just to get the approval of the village people that you're safe to come in.
Yeah.
And we did what was needed to be done to give that, to serve God in that way.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to get back to doing more of that village work, and we'll see what God's got us for the next stage for us.
Yeah. Great.
Wow. I love hearing that, just the open-endedness to it. Now, I'm not shocked, though, to hear that kind of what's leading this is your wife's cooking again. That seems to be a theme that I keep hearing, but that's pretty exciting. My brother-in-law, I wish I had more details. I just have a terrible memory for this, but he worked at a church up in Kenai for a while. Like right after he got married, they moved up there, and he helped kind of plant this church, and he was with one of his good friends. And they spent a lot of time, and I remember him telling me just about the communities that they were serving. And I think most of us in the lower 48 are absolutely, like, we have no conception of what life in Alaska looks like. Even in the largest places and the distance between the cost of everything, it's all so much beyond us. So I'm grateful for people willing to take a risk, show up, and, all right, God, wherever you're going to need me. Because it sounds like that's what the guy that asked your wife to come on said to you is, all right, you willing to do whatever I need you to do? Which sounds awfully familiar to me. It seems like kind of what God does for most of us. Hey, you willing to do whatever I need you to do?
Yes.
And then we get to see how he uses it after the fact. This is definitely one of those podcasts where we've got to make sure that we get a good follow-up so that we can, whether it's Zoom or not, we're going to have to figure out how this all goes next, because there's going to be a lot of listeners sitting here wondering, okay, so what did it look like? What was the next step? How does it look? How'd the fishing trips go? Yeah. Where did the Millers end up?
Yeah, how did the guns they won work in Alaska for them?
How many animals have they slain with them? Yeah, absolutely.
Probably, I believe kind of an unwritten code in sportsman's banquet world is that they should invite one of the hosts of the sportsman's banquet up to help them, at least pack out the animals they're killing with their guns.
Which immediately as I hear that, I'm looking at the two of us and I'm thinking, well, there's one of us that would be much more adept at the packing out of the animals. So he can actually get his knees above the snow level. So no, LeRoy, I'm really grateful for the time that you've spent just kind of giving us a little bit of this. There's two things that I kind of want to, one, I want to just give you an open opportunity. We never hit everything in a podcast, but I'm curious if there's anything that you really wanted to touch on that maybe we didn't hit. And then the other piece is I want to give you a chance to tell our crew, like the people that listen regularly, how can they catch up? I don't know if social media exists in Alaska. I don't know what those things. I happen to know just in our communication that I feel like it's unlikely that social media is probably the way. But you've got a radio show up there. So
yeah.
So first, is there anything that we missed?
Okay. So radio ministry. I'll mention that really fast. I don't have a radio voice. The guys on the podcast will realize that when they listen to me talk. But I do have a radio face. So I know that.
I don't know. I feel like you got the perfect rasp for this. Like I'm looking forward to hearing it on the other end. So
okay. So the radio ministry has been a blessing being a part of, because it's not just a radio, it's the extension of the radio to the village, and we got to do follow up. And so that was a blessing. I think I mentioned a little bit about, but I was blessed more serving that radio ministry than I think than blessing other people. I hope I were able to bless people. But when I go into villages, the first thing we would do was we would pray outside the village. And we would pray that the words that we use, God is not being offensive to them. We won't offend somebody, because when you offend a native person, you lost them. They're not going to listen to you no more. And so we want to be God's voice whenever we went in. Anything we did was pleasing to God and what He wanted us to say to the individuals. So it's a fine line there as you serve up there. It's such a fine line that it makes it very difficult for missionaries to actually live in a village, to serve in that village, to be the pastor of the church in that village. Because the village itself, they're always divided. You go to church, they're always divided. You got these people sit together, you got these family members who don't want to talk to those other family. And it's amazing if you sit back and you watch everything unfold. And it's the same in village life. It's a tight community. There's nowhere to go. And so if you come in, you're now sometimes a liaison. Sometimes you can't. Why did you go talk to them and you haven't talked to us yet when you came and visited? It's a difficult ministry. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There are a lot of missionaries in villages that you need your prayers. They need constant prayer so they can get through their time, not only just serving their village, but also working with themselves and their family unit. That's why I mentioned the person that knew him and his wife had to come out. They're the only missionaries there. The missionaries that were there had to step down. They had God's calling elsewhere, and they left. Now they're there by themselves, and it just escalated the problems they had in their marriage. And they knew it, but they didn't know what to do about it. Right. So I just want to throw that there. But sorry, Martin, can you just repeat a little bit?
No.
My
anything that we might have missed. But while we're on the radio, what's the name of the radio show? Is that something we could find in the lower 48?
Yeah. Voice for Christ Ministry is the name of the organization, vfcm.org. And in that, you're going to find 3 manned radio stations with over 60 repeater sites through the state of Alaska. And so when you're there on the radio, you're speaking to almost all of Alaska, just with that one radio ministry. It's so neat. I put together a program based out of Fairbanks, Alaska, with the World Eskimo Olympics. These are Olympic-based games that they came up with that they would do in their own homes. This is something you look up, Martin.
I was going to say, I've seen this. It looks amazing.
So they do the 2-foot high kick, the 1-foot high kick. They do the 1-foot hand reach. They do the seal hop. Just amazing things. You guys ever watch?
This might be the men's retreat.
The Eskimo,
we're shifting everything.
The Eskimo Ninja Warrior.
Yeah.
With the what is that thing? What is that warrior game that they do? Ninja Warriors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
American Ninja Warrior.
American Ninja Warriors, that one.
They did an Eskimo Ninja Warrior?
So, no. So there's a guy who came on the American Ninja Warriors, calls himself an Eskimo Ninja Warrior because he lives in Unalakleet, Alaska, by the name of Nick Hansen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I met Nick at the Eskimo Games, the Eskimo Games himself, and he's there doing all the high kicks, the pole walk, grease pole walk, all these different things,
These are exactly what they sound like, by the way. It is the most fascinating thing I've ever seen.
It is.
I'm like, I missed my calling. I could have been an athlete had I been born in the right place.
Yes, if you're, and also the right ethnicity.
Yeah.
You can't be a white person living there to be part of these games.
It's fair.
So it's amazing. But I would go there under the guide of Voice for Christ Ministry, doing interviews with them to put it on the radio. And I did. I would interview the athletes, go to the ones who win the gold, ask them questions. And what I would take was I'd go in there with, okay, God, you laid this on my heart. I'm going to ask questions leading up to this, and I'm going to put together a program with the gospel message at the end of the program. So for 4 years, I put together a program until we got too busy at camp and I couldn't do it no more. And I loved it. Serving God in an atmosphere I never thought I would ever do in my life. So yeah, it's amazing what, if you're open to see what God wants to do for you in your life and step into it, that, wow, this is something I can do. I can climb a tower. I can ride a snow machine over ice that ended up being 60 feet up in the air because the ice pushed into each other. And I'm on an ice lodge way up there, and the only way down is either go back 5 miles to where we got up on this ice jam, or just drop down into the riverbed below us and continue traveling. Let's just drop down. Yeah, I can do that, God. I can, raise a family that in harsh conditions by ourselves, with my wife as my co-pilot. But at the same time, when we start to align ourselves, we run into some difficulties and we need your help. And we got the help that we needed. So life has been fulfilling for us up there. Really? We know it's going to continue to be fulfilling. We're looking forward to it. We actually bought property. No money. God gave us property.
Wait.
Because when we were renting, I was working full time, we were renting, somehow also serving. We always look back like, God, how did you stretch $1? But we got a piece of property and we've been praying about it. Can we build on this and use this for ministry? Maybe that's his next stage. We don't know. But we do know we have the property. He gave it to us for some reason. Cool. So we're excited to see what he's going to do in our lives.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So how do we keep up with you? Like how yeah.
Yes. So
other than VFCM.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so I forgot about that part of your question. Yes, there is media up there. No, I do not know anything about media. I don't do I can name what they are because I don't know what they are. My wife does FaceTime, and not FaceTime, Facebook. Thank you. Yep. She does that.
You are now the healthiest person I have ever met. Like just there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not any platforms. My phone rarely gets service. I rarely carry it around.
I found that.
Yeah, you found that. Yes. I always give people my wife's number. It says, sorry, it's my wife's number. If I get a hold of me, get a hold of her. She'll get a hold of me for you. Anyhow, I don't do any of that jazz, but we do have email, and I still do that. So Miller's _milepost at hotmail.com. Nobody uses Hotmail anymore. Everybody uses Gmail, so we haven't updated yet. Or you can give at CMC, just like I had my wife write it down because I'm not going to remember, cmcmissions.org. That's where our finances roll through. CMC stands for Central Missionary Clearinghouse. They're a facility based out of Texas, and we use them because we went independent. So for money to get to us, we went to an independent organization, and that's how it gets to us financially.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we will do our best to make sure those get linked in the show notes so that people can find them. But yeah, there's going to be, so if you get a bunch of random emails from people in the upper Michigan area, you can understand that we're going to be fascinated to know where the rest of this story goes. But Adam, you got anything?
No, it's great. It's good. Appreciate the time, LeRoy.
You're welcome, Adam. Thank you, Martin.
LeRoy, thank you so much just for spending the day with us, for working this out. I know you guys are headed back up soon. It's like 2 weeks out, right?
Yeah, right after the 15th is when we're going to travel across the United States, get to visit my brother on the other side. On the way there, we're stopping in Kansas. Our daughter just moved down there with the military. So our oldest daughter, who has one grandchild, so we get to see the grandchild a little bit. Her husband's in the military, so they get moved out of Alaska. And then after in Washington, I'm supposed to do a conference there. I don't think it's going to happen because I haven't heard from the church yet. I sent a message to them a little bit ago. We'll be heading straight back up to Alaska. And first thing we'll do when we land there is, get back there because we're driving, not landing. But we're doing a mission trip to Eagle, Alaska. And you'll find this interesting, Martin, because you mentioned the size of the state and everything.
Yeah.
Eagle, Alaska, we leave out of Wasilla, just outside of Palmer, and we head from Wasilla to Eagle, Alaska. It's a 2-day drive. Our first day is a 10-hour drive to Tok, just under 10, to Tok. And then our next day is by mileage, it's not very far, but by the curvy roads, dirt with hillsides on your sides, mountain passes, it's another 6-hour drive.
Oh,
so
Tok is in the Iditarod, right?
Mm-mm.
It's not part of that?
No, the Tok is what they call the Tok cutoff. It's if you ever drive into Alaska, as soon as you come in, the first big town you come into is Tok. And there's really nothing there. It used to be a tourist trap where people would come in and like, oh, look at this fish I can eat at this campground. Well, that place closed down.
Maybe I'm thinking of the, isn't it the Iron Dog? Isn't that the snow sled
Iron Dog
race?
is a 2,000-mile snow machine race.
Yep.
Starts in Big Lake, Alaska, ends in Fairbanks, and they go to Nome halfway. So Nome might be what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
So Nome for that Iditarod race, which just started 2 days ago. So if you want to go look up how the Iditarod race is going, they just started. They go into Nome for the finish.
Got it.
They normally start out of Willow, Alaska, where we were residing and serving out of.
Mm-hmm.
But this year they couldn't start at Willow because of the snow load is zero amount of snow load throughout the state of Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We got all theirs.
Yeah. We get all theirs. Yeah. My boy said, hey, it's snowing here. It's following us.
Yeah.
We went visit some friends in Wisconsin. We get there, they have no snow. We leave, they have like 5 inches of snow for 3
Easy.
days.
That's not a way to become real popular right now.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
getting deep in past February now. So
Yeah. So so Alaska has like nothing up there. Iron Dog, they ran miles upon miles upon miles of dry tundra ground.
Wow.
Not very good for snow machines which need snow on it
Yeah.
to keep
Yeah.
cool.
Wild.
Yeah.
Joshua Roach, the pastor up there that we support, he's done the Iron Dog a couple of times.
Nice.
And just hearing the description of everything that they go through in that 2,000-mile race is unbelievable.
It is
And-
unbelievable.
And the effect on the body.
Oh yeah.
So
Did he race which class, do you know?
no idea.
Okay, so they have a couple classes when you run it. One is stock machines, other one's improved machines. So sometimes they swap out the engines, but mainly it's like different shocks.
Yeah.
More added fuel tank, just all this stuff. They just pour the money into the machines so that they can drive over 100 miles an hour, just like the whole trip through.
Yeah,
Forever.
full send.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's cool.
Alaska sounds
fun,
awesome.
right? To our producer, Sam Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be something we should do just for fun. Okay.
Yeah.
I figured
Sounds
it would be.
amazing. Well, for what it's worth, man, thank you so much for spending the time with us, because that sounds like you've got a lot going on and you're about to spend a lot of time in a car. So it's an honor that you gave us the time that you did. Thank your family, because I know that every time you're here, they're somewhere else, and this is time you could have been spending with them. So we're grateful. I think this was an awesome opportunity to hear a little bit more. We'll make sure we get all that information in afterwards. And with that said, I think this is us signing out. Adam Ray, Martin, Sam Brown, thank you for filling in today while the Vermilias are out gallivanting around the world, slacking. And our new friend, LeRoy, and his family Millers. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.